Welcome back, everyone, to This Week in CA Football presented by Geico. Rob Washburn and I are back after what was another exciting weekend around the conference. A lot of head-turning headlines as we put a bow on what was an exciting Saturday around the league.
Yeah, let's start at the top of the conference standings, which is where the Rhode Island Rams reside after rolling past UAlbany 45-26 last Saturday. Rhodey scored on its first 7 possessions and improved to 2-0 in conference play for the first time since 2001. The Rams also moved into the top 25 this week for the first time in 17 years. Maine is off to a 2-0 start as well after rallying from a 21-point first-quarter deficit to knock off Western Kentucky 31-28. Chris Ferguson threw 3 touchdown passes, and the Black Hole defense recorded 6 sacks as the Black Bears beat an FBS opponent for the first time since 2013. In a battle of top 25 FCS teams, Elon dominated Furman 45-7 behind a punishing ground game and a dominant defensive effort. Delaware, James Madison, Richmond, Stony Brook, and Villanova also recorded convincing victories as the league is off to an 8-1 start in non-conference FCS games after going 26-6 a year ago. And once again this week, there are 6 CA teams in the Stats Top 25 poll, with 3 others receiving votes, which is the most of any conference in the nation.
Well, Hurricane Florence is kind of wreaking havoc with the CA football schedule this weekend. Saturday's conference game between Elon and William & Mary has been postponed, and James Madison's home opener with Robert Morris has been moved up to Thursday night, so we have some Thursday night football at 7 o'clock on NBC Sports Washington and CA.TV.
Yeah, I think the Dukes are getting a little tired of Mother Nature at this point.
Yes.
After sitting through a couple of lightning delays in last Saturday's 17-0 victory at Norfolk State that was called after just one quarter. Quarterback Ben DiNucci ran for 67 yards and a touchdown. D'Angelo Amos returned to punt 76 yards for a score, and that's all they would need as JMU's defense held Norfolk State to just 29 yards. The biggest thing for this young JMU team is getting game action for its starters and reserves before conference play gets underway next week, so that's why having a chance to play on Thursday is so important. Now, Robert Morris is 1-1 after rallying past Virginia State 22-19 last week. They feature quarterback Jimmy Walker, who threw for 205 yards and 2 TDs in that win.
Also moving to Thursday night at 5 o'clock and switching venues in Richmond, which will now play at St. Francis in Pennsylvania instead of Robins Stadium.
Yeah, after a season opening setback in Virginia, Richmond got rolling in a big way last Saturday, scoring 35 points in the third quarter and beating Fordham 52-7. The Spiders piled up 595 yards of total offense with a balanced attack. Now, we've talked about the need for Richmond to run the ball better, and they did that against Fordham with 288 yards. That opened things up through the air as Dejon Brissett caught 4 balls for 178 yards, including an 80-yard TD to open the second half. Quarterback Kevin Johnson showed his variety of skills, running for 2 touchdowns and throwing for 2 more. The Spiders' defense was equally as impressive, limiting Fordham to 193 total yards, including -3 on the ground. They were also able to force 4 turnovers. Now, St. Francis evened its record at 1-1 after topping Delaware State 45-14 last Saturday. Quarterback Bear Fenimore passed for 202 yards and 2 TDs and also ran for 2 scores in the win, so the Spiders are going to need to slow him down.
Rhode Island will kick things off to begin Saturday with the noon matchup at FBS foe UConn on ESPN3 and SNY.
Yeah, Rhode Island performed well in all phases of the game in the win over UAlbany. The offense scored 6 touchdowns and a field goal in their first 7 possessions. Quarterback Jawan Lawson completed 22 of 28 passes for 317 yards and 4 touchdowns, and the Rams had 2 receivers go over 100 yards as Aaron Parker and Isaiah Coulter each made 9 catches. Now, defensively, Rhodey held the Great Danes to just 7 points through the first 3 quarters behind a big day from LB Mack with 2 sacks and a forced fumble. The Rams also scored on special teams as Amir Dorsey returned to punt 69 yards for a touchdown. Now, UConn's had a tough start to the year with lopsided losses to nationally ranked UCF and Boise State, and defensively, they're giving up an incredible 735 yards per game. I'm sure the Huskies are looking at this game as the opportunity to get their season turned around, but Rhode Island comes into the game with a lot of confidence. Interestingly, the last time the Rams won an FBS game was 2000 when they knocked off UConn 26-21.
At 3:30 on Fox College Sports, Fox Sports Go, and CA.TV, Villanova welcomes Towson.
Yeah, this is the conference opener for both teams and a game I'm really looking forward to. Villanova shook off a slow start at Lehigh last week and posted a 31-9 victory to move to 2-0 for the first time since 2009. Zach Bednarczyk threw for 3 touchdowns for the second straight game, and he's developed a go-to receiver in Jarrett McClinton, who caught 6 passes for 114 yards and 2 scores. Now, the Wildcats were also able to move the ball on the ground with nearly 200 yards rushing. Villanova's defense continues to be outstanding, holding Lehigh to 32 yards on the ground and 176 overall. Even with some new faces in the lineup, they continue to shut teams down, especially in the run game. Now, Towson was trading blows with ACC foe Wake Forest for much of the first half last Saturday before a pair of TDs on punt returns broke their back in a 51-20 loss. The Tigers have found an excellent quarterback in Tom Flacco, who was 35 of 51 passing for 345 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's very comfortable running the Tigers' fast-paced offense, and Towson's getting contributions from a variety of receivers led by Shane Leatherberry, Jabari Greenwood, and Sam Gallahan. Now, defensively, we've talked a lot about the strength of the Tigers linebackers, and DeAndre Wallace recorded a career-high 16 tackles and forced a fumble a week ago. That group will be tested this week against a veteran quarterback like Bednarczyk. It's the home opener for Villanova and the third straight road game for Towson, but I would expect quite a battle on Saturday.
Also at 3:30, Delaware completes their 3-game homestand against Cornell out of the Ivy League.
Yeah, Delaware was anxious to get back on the field after dropping their opener to Rhode Island, and it showed as they performed well in all phases of the game and blanking Lafayette 37-0. Quarterback Pat Kehoe passed for 279 yards and 3 first-half touchdowns as the Blue Hens piled up over 400 yards of total offense. Delaware is developing a nice, solid 1-2 punch in the backfield with Dejon Lee and Kenai Kane, who combined for nearly 150 yards on the ground. Now, the Blue Hens were dominant defensively as well, holding Lafayette to negative 18 yards rushing and 118 yards overall while forcing 4 turnovers. Delaware's All-Americans on that side of the ball led the way as linebacker Troy Reeder made a team-high 8 tackles and Nasir Adderley picked off his first pass of the year. Getting ready for Cornell is a little tricky since this will be their first game of the season. However, Delaware has some knowledge from last year's 41-14 victory in which they forced 5 first-half turnovers.
At 5 o'clock on the Pac-12 Network, New Hampshire heads out west to take on Colorado.
Yeah, the season's certainly gotten off to a tough start for New Hampshire, which dropped to 0-2 after a 10-3 loss to Colgate in their home opener last week. The bright spot was that the Wildcats' defense was much improved over Week 1, limiting Colgate to 214 yards and 11 first downs. All-CA linebacker Quinn Lindeen was all over the field with a career-high 16 tackles, and UNH got 2 sacks apiece from Ryan Sosnak and Jawan Horton. Offensively, quarterback Christian Lupoli passed for 133 yards in place of CA preseason player of the year Trevor Knight, who's expected to be out again this week as he recovers from that shoulder injury. All-America receiver Neil O'Connor caught 10 balls for over 100 yards, but the Wildcats weren't able to have much success on the ground for the second week in a row. Now, Colorado presents an extremely challenging test as they improved to 2-0 with a 33-28 win at Nebraska last week. Quarterback Steven Montez passed for 351 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Cornhuskers.
At 6 o'clock, Stony Brook hits the road to take on Fordham.
Yeah, Stony Brook was another team that got contributions from all units in a 50-21 victory over Bryant last week. The Seawolves fell behind 21-20 in the third quarter, but then reeled off 31 unanswered points over the final 22 minutes. Offensively, Stony Brook got its traditionally powerful ground attack rolling as Jordan Gallons ran for 146 yards on only 14 carries, and Donald Leontine added 107 yards on the ground, and he also caught a 24-yard TD pass. Defense added big plays of its own as E.J. Finneran returned an interception 79 yards for a score in the second quarter, and DeMarcus Miller closed out the game with a 95-yard interception return for a TD. All-CA linebacker Shane Lawless also had a huge night with 17 tackles. In addition, Stony Brook continues its success with blocking punts as Casey Williams came up the middle to get his hands on a Bryant punt and then returned it 12 yards for a TD in the third quarter. Now, as we mentioned earlier, Fordham was beaten last week at CA4 Richmond. However, I'd expect them to be ready to go at home on Saturday as there'll be some bragging rights on the line between these New York neighbors.
Wrap up Week 3 with Albany's home opener at 7 o'clock as they take on Morgan State.
Yeah, UAlbany was really disappointed with their performance in last week's loss at Rhode Island, especially with their inability to slow down the Rams' offense. The Great Danes are dealing with some injuries in the secondary and a lot of new faces overall, but they're focused on getting things fixed and returning to the level that they usually perform at. One bright spot last week on defense was safety Tyler Carswell, who made a career-high 14 tackles. Now, the UAlbany offense has been able to move the ball through the air as Vince Testaverde passed for 228 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. The Great Danes would like to get star running back Elijah Ibitoke and Hanks rolling this week, although his backup Carl Mofor contributed 117 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Now, Morgan State's off to an 0-2 start, including a 36-10 setback to Towson in Week 1. The Great Danes beat Morgan 26-0 in Baltimore last year and are hoping for a similar performance. And after starting with 2 games on the road, UAlbany should be really excited to be at home this Saturday.
CASports.com/live scores is your source for live scoring and in-game live stats throughout the third week of the college football season. Also remember to check in with us on Saturday night with complete wrap-up with our CA Football Rewind on CAFootball.com.
Yeah, of course you can continue to follow the league on our many social media platforms such as Facebook.com/CAFootball and Twitter @CAFootball using the hashtag CAAFB.
The CA Football on-campus tour began this past Saturday with a stop at New Hampshire. Make sure to check out all the sights and sounds from the weekend and tune in Thursday for our first Going Deep feature on the Wildcats.
Yeah, our CA Football crew had a chance to sit down with New Hampshire's Jared Keel and Kyle Reiser, two guys who grew up together, were teammates on a state championship team in high school, and are now a big part of the Wildcats defense.
That is it from us today. Enjoy the games, everyone.